They came from everywhere imaginable to the lure of opportunity. News of the Great Chicago Fire had been global headlines in 1871, and people of every culture recognized that the greatest urban recovery in the history of the world spelled work. The new city was in demand. The only questions to be answered: who would be the thousands to build it, and who would be the few to design it? America's largest building boom ever drew not only workers, but brilliant minds. Among them architects who would inspire the world: Burnham, Root, Adler, and Sullivan. And what they found was a city intent on taking advantage of possibility. One of the characteristics that's become ingrained in Chicago culture ever since. Chicago's flag is a reminder. The 4 stars on the Chicago flag represent Fort Dearborn, the Chicago Fire, the 1893 Columbian Exposition, and the 1934 Century of Progress Exposition. These last 2 were not simply World's Fairs, but turning points in the history of the modern world. Determined to prove that nothing, not even the worst fire in history, could deter the spirit of Chicago, they not only rebuilt the city, they planned the most spectacular World's Fair ever imagined. Their goal wasn't simply to hold a popular event. No, Chicago had something to prove. After years of being seen an unrefined country cousin to older eastern cities, and suffering the kind of disaster from which a city might never recover, Chicago intended to prove beyond any doubts that they would lead the world into the modern age. This innovative energy not only produced the first skyscrapers, but also made possible many other impressive firsts. In its 6 short months, the Columbian Exposition attracted 27 million visitors, almost 1/2 of the U.S. total population at that time. As they walked among massive classical buildings, through the first large-scale landscape architecture, lit for the first time in history by thousands of electric lights, they discovered the future. Towering above was George Ferris's giant wheel. It stood 250 feet above the ground, contained 36 cars, each of which was capable of carrying 60 people, for a total of 2,160 people at a time. The axle for the 12,000-ton Ferris wheel, as it became known, was the largest steel forging accomplished for its day. In addition to the array of scientific and technological marvels, a detour to the Midway introduced Americans to a throng of model international villages teeming with culture, food, and entertainment, including the notorious and thus popular Little Egypt, Coochie Coochie Girl of the Nile. The carnival concept was born. Visitors were encouraged to try a first taste of what would become food dynasties: Aunt Jemima syrup, Cracker Jack, cream of wheat, diet carbonated soda, juicy fruit gum, Pabst beer, and shredded wheat. The fair introduced the hamburger to the United States. The U.S. Postal Service produced its first commemorative stamp set and its first picture postcards. And even the U.S. Mint got into the act with its first commemorative coins. New York Sun editor Charles Dana, tired of hearing Chicagoans boast about their innovative leadership, dubbed Chicago the Windy City. Even those whose roots were in New York began to see the East Coast as the Old World and Chicago as the New.